Hello, everyone. So there's been some more changes to the way that I'm able to promote my work, with YouTube now allowing people to come back on in what seems like a non-censored way. Although some of the things I've already tried to put on from the past have had a copyright strike already, even though it's my own work. So I'm still trying to get through to YouTube to find out what the issues are around that. But essentially, I've been building up a subscription site at locals.com where all my latest intel has been getting placed over the last 3 years. And previously, as you all know, I've had a number of platforms collapsed, which means each time they do that, I lose my entire business. So in the beginning, I had to stop posting intel on YouTube, as you all know, which affected my income. Then I had a Patreon taken down with all my subscribers. So again, I lost all my income. I've had Facebook groups disappear with large amounts of followers taken down. Then Vimeo was taken down, and it goes on and on. So over the past 5 years, I've had to restart my business a number of times. And so what I'm trying to do right now is I'm trying to offer memberships on YouTube where my latest intel will be posted, and you can buy that membership on a month-by-month basis with the ability to cancel at any time. And I'm hoping that the people that would have been over at Locals may now come to YouTube and support me that way. In the meantime, I will be posting old intel, which is now becoming relevant because, as you know, I normally get information 1 or 2 years out. So the information that's now becoming relevant, even though I recorded it maybe 1 or 2 years ago, I'm going to now post that out onto YouTube for non-members. And my latest intel, I will put under the membership scheme. This is the way that a lot of creators nowadays make their income. So I'm thankful to everyone that continues to support my work. And I hope that you really enjoy not just the old content, which is now coming into play, but also the new content which I'm producing, which is showing us the way forward in maybe the next 1 or 2 years. So you have the options to look at both timelines. Thank you for all your likes and your comments. And you can also help me to grow by obviously sharing videos. And you can also support me through Super Chat on YouTube. If you want to join my website, it's www.goldenheavenonearth.net. And at the website, you can book me for personal consultation, and you can book courses and buy merchandise. Thank you for sticking with me through all of these different changes. It's been very difficult to run a business and get intel to people over the past 5 years. I've managed to stay this long, and that's all due to your kindness and ongoing support. Thank you very much. Bye for now. Hello, everyone. I have a very big update for everybody today regarding Spaceforce and what's ahead of us in terms of the elections of 2024 and how that's linked into what they're telling me about the new military worldwide peace plan. So I'll just start with my questions as usual, and I hope that you really enjoy everything that's been channeled for us today. So the first thing I wanted to know was, will President Trump be part of the 2024 election? And they said no. They said that President Trump will be the face of a new military setup, which is currently on track for America around 2026 to 2027. And I said to them, what is meant by the new military setup? And they said to me that the old two-party system of politics, which creates division and create sides and animosity is going to be dissolved. And they said that a new framework, technological framework, is being written to oversee fair leadership, supervision, and protection worldwide. They said that it is overseen by the military and it is currently classified. And then I asked them, how is it intended that this new system will operate? At what point will it be available to the masses? They said that it is intended that on a worldwide level, all countries will integrate the new system into each geographical region by 2026-27 going forward. So then I said, the worldwide military operations and training that we're currently having reported to us that are on the ground, are these part of the new setup? And they said yes and no. They said that the worldwide military operations on a strategic Spaceforce level is for the new setup of 26-27 going forward. But the military operations and training of personnel on the ground are just normal military training operations. Then I said to them, so the new setup will be run by Spaceforce and all of its counterparts and subdivisions worldwide? And they said yes. And I said, what level of development and integration are we at currently? And they said it is currently operational, albeit in a beta, in approximately 80% of the worldwide military strategic teams. And I said, military strategic teams, are these the counterparts to Spaceforce in the USA? And they said, yes, they are. I said, at the military strategic levels of Spaceforce, it would appear that on a worldwide level, everyone is working towards a worldwide operating peace plan. And they said, yes, this is correct. So if you've been following me on my locals.com channel, you'll see that I've been putting up lots of news about how different countries are signing in to Spaceforce, including Portugal, Japan, and the UK, are just some of the most recent ones that I've put on my feed at locals.com. So then I said, so in real terms, is a war on the ground going to be necessary between any countries or continents? And they said, it is not anticipated that there is a need for war in any location going forward under the new worldwide military peace plan. And I said, is this a white hat military plan? And they said, yes. And they said that any dark players are being tracked and removed on an ongoing basis. And all information about citizens, their locations, their operations, their intentions is now already on the superior military quantum web and infrastructure. And I said, is this infrastructure what you've been calling Web 5, Web 7? Well, that's the label they've given to me. And they said, yes, in some cases, Web 5.7 is multi-layered and it has different versions. So, for example, they're saying there's also a version 9.11, 13.15, and 17, and that each layer is designed to tackle different emerging threats with key personnel. And I said, key personnel. And they said, the Web 5.7 software can detect anomalies within the parameters of how military personnel are operating. So I said, is it an AI system? And they said, partly. And I said, when you say that it can detect anomalies within the parameters of military personnel, do you mean all military personnel? And they said, no, it can detect anomalies in the behavior of the operators and programmers within the currently classified Web 5, Web 7 setup. And I said, what would an anomaly look like under the current conditions? And they said it would be where an operator was trying to reprogram outside of current protocols, which will ensure the safety to the citizens. So I said to them, so are you saying that the strategic military operations, which are currently classified, can detect if an operator, programmer, or a guardian is trying to program the system outside of the peace treaty protocols? And they said, yes, that is correct. Then I said, what is the role of the military guardians in this currently classified area of military strategic planning and operations? And they said to me that the military guardians are a step below this classified strategic military plan and operation at the moment. So then I said, so who has access to the strategic military plan worldwide? And they said to me that there are 6 commander-in-chiefs worldwide who currently know about these operations, but none of them know the classified content of the others outside of their own region. And they said that only a handful of people worldwide know the full strategic and operational goals of the military going forward. And I said, is Donald Trump one of those people? And they said, yes. Although again, for his own safety, they said that certain details are kept under lock and key and on a need-to-know basis. But they said that Donald J. Trump most definitely has the biggest, albeit broadest overview of the worldwide military strategic plan. I said, is Spaceforce all about fighting war, or is it about maintaining peace? So is it in an offensive or a defensive position in terms of its strategic planning? And they said to me that most of Spaceforce is set up in a defensive strategic role, but some specialized operations, they said, within Spaceforce will run the offensive operation strategies. So then if you look at the diagram that I'm now going to put up for you, you'll be able to see the Delta wing of the Space Operations Command. And you'll see there are quite a number of them. And they fall within the space warfighting architecture. And I wanted to know, because I was drawn to this diagram, especially the Delta arms, I wanted to know, are the Delta forces on this diagram within this hierarchy, are they defensive or offensive? And they said both. And I said, what does this mean exactly? They said it means that they are both active and proactive in strategic planning regarding how operations will run within Spaceforce in order to maintain a worldwide peace plan. And I said, what is the difference between offensive and defensive in military terms? They said offensive is where a proactive approach is taken ahead of a perceived potential threat and or unknown threats. And I said, so offensive is like a what-if strategy? And they said yes. And they said defensive is more a reaction to an ongoing threat or a newly activated or discovered threat. And they said that Spaceforce worldwide does need to do both. So then I said, in the space warfighting architecture hierarchy, what happens under Space Operations Command? And they said to me that Space Operations Command is more concerned with strategy and developments of software and operations, and who and what will be included in the overall design of the worldwide peace plan. Most of Space Operations Command is classified and has a counterpart in each geographical location of the world, i.e. north, south, east, west. And they said that the commander-in-chiefs work closely with Space Operations Command. And I said, where on this hierarchy does the legislative arm of DC fit in, the White House? And they said it doesn't. They said to me that the Space Operations Command is not governed directly by the White House or its administrative or legislative arms or departments. They said the Space Operations Command is a separate entity. So then I wanted to find out a little bit more about who are these Delta arms, which you can see on the diagram. And they said these are the programmers. So I asked, are these the programmers? And they said, yes, the Delta sections are the programmers. And I said, so what can you tell me that isn't already public knowledge or published? They said the strategy of the military, the leaders and the commanders-in-chief of the Northeast, Southwest regions of the world is to proactively establish protocols to enable a worldwide technological system of programming to prevent wars and keep all countries in a state of freedom for its citizens. They said that there appears to be slow progress to the day-to-day citizen, as these infrastructures and programs are to the greatest extent still being tested, and the whole system is being assembled so that it remains hack-proof. So that it remains hack-proof. They said on the ground, political parties will become obsolete as this new decentralized system of managing decisions, infrastructure, money, education, and healthcare is rolled out. They said to keep the streets safe during this handover, everything has to appear to be business as usual on the ground. So they're saying that elections and bureaucracy will continue to run the same, at least on the surface levels, until the military are completely happy that the new system can run on a relatively standalone basis. And I said, standalone, how can it run on a relatively standalone basis? And they said to me that the intention is for this worldwide program to be implemented with the same rules of engagement and interaction all over. And this requires that all countries abide by the precepts without deviating from the practices and principles to keep it all running smoothly and efficiently on the ground. It is already running in the background with teams of specialized personnel trying to hack into it to test its capabilities. So then I asked, what are the actual capabilities of the Delta arms of the Space Operations Command? They said the Delta arm is the operations part of the Strategic Spaceforce Division that is highly classified. They said that Delta is deliberately broken down into components so that not one department has the overall strategy, that they only know their one piece. And I said, but isn't on a need-to-know basis like the normal practice within the military strategy and operations anyway? And they said yes and no. They said in regard to Delta strategy and operations, they are still being designed and are changing hourly. They said in other sectors of the military, protocols are already ratified and documented as procedural protocols. But Delta is not yet documented or ratified. It is a developing area of the military with many unknowns. So procedural protocols are not exactly ratified or in place in the traditional sense. They said that technology, AI, and the knowledge about cybersecurity is an ever-evolving situation, always changing, growing, and needing immediate decision-making. No referring back to the Law of War manual, as this is an outdated protocol in the cyberspace environment. All procedures, rules, protocols are literally being designed as each event unfolds. And I said, what sort of events? And they said, mainly cybersecurity events, exposing where potentially the Starlink system has weakness or vulnerability. So I said the concepts of war and peace as written in the Law of War manual, will they be completely rewritten to adapt to cyber and space air operations? And they said exactly. And I said, my understanding is that space is an infrastructure for peace. So wouldn't it be called the Law of Peace manual? And they said, exactly. Then I asked, how are the military operators and strategists, how are they adapting to this changing landscape and operations in space? And they said that the emphasis is on training and encouraging more recruitment around programming, innovation, and strategy, particularly with regard to thinking outside of the box. They said the old military protocols were developed for operators to follow a chain of command, but in the modern structure of Space Command, it is being encouraged to think outside the box and to bring innovation and to experiment. And then I said, so this new way of managing peace around the world, how will it be introduced to the citizens? They said in some instances, it will not be public information as such. And they said that how it will be promoted in general is a fun, new space age generation which fosters innovation. A new style of culture around the military careers is being introduced with the concept of guardians. So then I said, are Space Operations Command developing any sort of EBS system? They said yes and no. They said the EBS, which would be an emergency broadcast system, has been put on hold. but operators are working on a worldwide transmission system which can communicate to every citizen simultaneously. And I said, wow, what would be the purpose or reason for needing to communicate to every citizen worldwide at the same time? What they said to me was, to bring in peace for the whole of humanity, then the information needs to be structured and delivered to reach everyone at the same time. It's a culture change for humanity. Change in psychology on a global scale. It needs accuracy and stability within the network to allow for this worldwide broadcast of peace. It is not an emergency broadcast system. It is a peace broadcast system. So then I said, how will it be delivered to the masses? They said that it is intended that TV networks, radio stations, and mobile phones will run the new worldwide objectives for peace. And I said, will celebrities, politicians, and spiritual leaders be used during this process? And they said, from the military standpoint, this is currently undecided. I said, is the peace broadcast overseen by the Northeast Southwest divisions and their commanders-in-chief? They said, not exactly. They said the peace broadcast is another arm of Space Operations Command. And I said, where is all this peace broadcast system being physically designed? Is it in, say, an underground facility? And they said, yes. And they said that some of those underground facilities are in Idaho. They also said that there is a peace broadcast counterpart in Eastern China, in Russia, and in Australia. And they said that the Arctic Circle is also being utilized for the peace broadcast operations. And I said, what is the name of the worldwide space collaboration? Is it still Starlink? And they said, yes. I said, is this the official name or the name you would like me to use? And they actually said both. Then I asked them the operations and the quadrilateral operations that were publicized recently, were they part of Starlink? And they said yes and no. I've put that actual item on my locals.com channel if you want to go and look at that, the quadrilateral operations. But what they did say to me was that anything you see on LinkedIn or publicized for everyone's consumption is a very watered down version of what is coming. They said it is a soft psychology drop to get people accustomed to being protected and overseen via Spaceforce. Via space. So then I asked them, how will the official announcement of Starlink, the space plan, and Spaceforce, how will it be handed over to the citizens? And they said it won't have an official handover as such, more that it will look like systems are changing on the ground, becoming more modern for the next generation. So I said, so it's like a next generation marketing campaign? And they said, yes. And I said, will this be in all sectors? And they said, I said, like in banking? And they said, yes. I said, in education? They said, in the tech side of education, yes. I said, healthcare? And they said, to a degree, changes to diagnosis protocols with more AI and telemedicine will be introduced. They said in communications, this will be the biggest area of change in the internet, technology changes, and more biometrics. So that's all for this video. I'm going to do a second video on the biometrics. So this video is not too long. And as I said, if you study the diagram around Space Operations Command and the delta wings, then you'll be able to see how everything's starting to fit together from the Space Force's position of trying to create a worldwide peace plan alongside our counterparts in other countries. So I hope you found this video very interesting today, and I'll see you next time. Bye for now. Hello everyone, this is part 2 of my military is the only way and Space Operations Command video. And we left off with them telling us that in the future we're going to have communications with more biometrics. And so I just wanted to go in a bit deeper and find out firstly about the biometrics. And so I asked them, first of all, what is a biometric? And they said to me that a biometric is a personal piece of a person's biology, which is used for data analysis and identification. So an example of a biometric could be fingerprints, the retina of your eye, blood like DNA, saliva, and possibly even, say, a brainwave. And I said brainwaves, and they said that each person has a unique way of thinking and feeling, which produces a unique consciousness ID. And I said, how is this analyzed or recorded? And how is this data regarding brain waves currently being gathered? This consciousness ID. And they said it's being gathered through speech patterns on, say, Alexa, for example, and also how you use the keyboard. So like your keyboard techniques, something called haptics. They also said that through experiments in labs and testing how brainwaves respond to different scenarios. And I said, so who is doing the brain cognitive and consciousness research to gather this data on our personal biometrics? And they said, mainly, this is being gathered through the AI in our technology and in the cloud. And I said, who is collecting or analyzing the data after that? And they said to me that many private organizations have been contracted to work with the military to establish consciousness biometrics. And I said, are they succeeding? And they said, very much so, that it is already running on beta in the military classified locations in the northeast, south, and west. And I said, so this isn't just going on like in America? And they said, no, that worldwide counterparts are trying to piece everything together. And I said, are these white hat counterparts? And they said, yes. And are they military white hat counterparts? And they said, yes, along with contracted, highly vetted private organizations. So then I said, are people like Google involved? And they said no. And I said, Facebook? They said no. I said, what about Meta? And they said yes. So I said, so isn't like Meta part of Facebook? And they said, no, Meta is a different arm to Facebook. Meta is only concerned with virtual reality and AI. And I said, are there other white hat organizations working alongside the military and Spaceforce? And they said, yes. I said, is the UN working alongside them? They said, actually, no. Is NATO? They said, yes. And they also said others like the quadrilateral counterparts, which, as I said, there's a document on mylocals.com about how other counterparts are signing in. Then I said, is there a white hat council been set up to work alongside the military and Space Force? And they said, not exactly, but there is a military council currently operating the beta testing of all quantum systems and future military protocols and documentation. They said it is highly classified, a highly classified sector under Semper Supra structure. And I said, what is the Semper Supra? Which you can see that it's actually listed on the hierarchy there. They said the motto, it's the motto for Spaceforce, basically meaning everyone under one umbrella. And I said, is it a protective umbrella? And they said, yes. And I said, how will Trump be seen to the masses once all this new setup is revealed to everyone? And they said, most people will not see how any of this is connected to Trump. And I said, so when will this new system become apparent, to the masses, this new Space Force system? They said, in the foreground, an ongoing campaign to show generational progress, change, and advancement will be promoted. And in the background, the highly classified system is currently on beta. They said it is anticipated that it will start to roll out to the masses in 2026-27, and it will be seen as new and exciting advance. It will be seen as new exciting advancements in tech as far as the public are concerned. And I said, once it starts to roll out officially to the masses, will it be fast or slow? And they said, in some industries like banking, it will go fast. And they said, but in technology and AI and biometrics, it will move more slowly. And this is to allow for safety and protocol updates. They said much personal data will be used. So it has to be a very safe tech environment to hold this level of personal data, which will create your new biometric ID, your unique ID, which cannot be hacked, and it has your DNA biometric attached. I said, where is the DNA biometric coming from and how is it being captured? And they said it would have been captured through your blood, your dental records, and your hospital records. They said even pets will have had theirs taken it from their pets' records. And they said plants will also be registered with a DNA biometric. And they said it is all on the blockchain. And I said, is anything within any vaccines being used to create part of this biometric ID? And they said, yes, the nano. They said the nano is also in the air, the land, and the food. And the nano creates a unique biometric within each human. And I said, is this currently operational? And they said, in some instances, yes. And I said, is it going to be used for good intention like freedom? And they said, yes. A bad system will be reversed to give freedom of speech, movement, and sovereignty. So they're saying that the new biometrics will replace what they currently are calling a bad system, and the new system with the biometrics will give you freedom of speech, freedom of movement, and sovereignty. I said, does the nano biometric connect our ID to the new financial system And they said, yes, in some cases. And I said, in some cases, they said, it is intended for full financial freedom, and the biometric ID will have a financial and nano component in, on, or around the body. I said, will 5G towers be used to monitor the biometric IDs? And they said, no, 5G will become obsolete. In the freedom cities, they said, for example, healing frequencies may be transmitted if the citizens vote for that feature. They said all features of the freedom cities will be decided by the decentralized voting and authority. And they said in future, even certain areas of a freedom city can be set up with healing frequency and not the whole thing if the people decide that. People will decide, for instance, if they want healing frequency in the whole city or just in certain places within it. So you could have like a healing garden or something like that. I said, will Spaceforce oversee these freedom cities? And they said, not directly, no. They only oversee the safety of the worldwide network, its stability, and the worldwide peace plan. And the Freedom City Administration and Technology will be managed by decentralized citizen management voting. So then just wanted to clarify again, will there be some sort of peace broadcast to the people, which we've currently had labeled as like an emergency broadcast system, but they're calling it a peace broadcast. So I said, will the masses be told the truths going forward? And what role will the toxic media play, if any? And they said that the dual narrative of the truth social movement and the opposing conspiracy labels from the toxic media will continue for quite some time, and that people are still being taught to think for themselves. They said toxic media will throw truths into the mix to gradually acclimate people going forward. This slow burn is not intended to change for some time, they said. They said that for some people, the TV and news is like a religion. So too much change too fast could create too much instability, and it could lead to like revolutions and violence. So they're not intending to do it that way, in a fast way. So then I said, so will there be a broadcast of some sort worldwide in the future, explaining all the changes necessary for our move into the quantum world of freedom cities? They said to me, there will be an unfolding of information worldwide, but not necessarily in one blast, as had previously been, as you previously had it described to you in the narratives around an emergency broadcast system. They're saying that the emphasis is always going to be on peace, calm, and re-educating for sovereignty. So there'll be no sudden shocking moves that might provoke revolution. Again, a slow burn to acclimate the people. So then I said, is there going to be a new currency coming? Just to check I'm going to try and tie together the biometrics with the currency. So I asked them, is there a new currency coming? And they said, yes. And I said, can you explain? They said the new currency will be a global digital currency backed by assets at the worldwide virtual vault, which if you don't know about the virtual vault, you can see that on one of my other videos called the Worldwide Virtual Vault. And I said, what will this currency be called? And they said that each region will call their digital currency something different in the Northeast, South, and West regions. And I said, who will curate and distribute these digital currencies? Will it be the central banks? And they said, initially, it may be seen to be the central banks, as this would be more normal for the citizens as they get used to the new concept. But again, it's because they're trying to keep things calm. They said once the digital currencies are established, then their true origin of control, which is the Starlink, will take over, and the banks will, on the whole, become obsolete. And people will speak to the quantum financial system directly through people will speak to the quantum financial system directly from their decentralized phones and laptops, etc. So I said, will the new digital currency be attached to these biometrics, like the eye, the retina, the fingerprint, the DNA, the voice recognition, and the consciousness ID, i.e. the brainwaves? And they said all of the above. So then I asked them, to what extent is the biometric system already set up and running? And they said it has been running on beta for many years, but until recently, we didn't have the quantum computing capacity to make a generational switch. Then I said, when will this biometric currency and other biometric facilities start to be introduced to the masses? They said it is already started in most areas, but will be normal as time progresses. Freedom cities will run entirely on biometrics, including voice recognition, brainwaves, and facial recognition, for example. Biometrics are multi-layered, creating a unique ID for each citizen. It will not be based on one biometric, but on a combination of many. I said, is the technology available now to run these freedom cities with these biometrics? They said it is currently being put together and it's highly classified in most instances. I said, who is coordinating the research and development of the biometric IDs? They said to me that many private specialist organizations have been contracted by governments to look at how this technology can be used safely in all walks of life worldwide. I said, but governments in their current format, will become obsolete, right? And they said, yes, hence the reason for biometrics, so that the day-to-day functions can run smoothly and safely without the need for, all these layers of government. And this will change the face of policing as well, they said. There'll be a major structural and cultural reorganization of policing in the road ahead of us. They said the concept of policing will look very different as technology steps in most cases. They said this is about 10 years out in the current estimates, and policing will be one of the last concepts to be seen to radically change. I said, will the new generation of military guardians oversee the policing duties going forward? They said, in some respects, policing in the future will be overseen by the new generation of military guardians. They said, guardians are being trained to run operations from space-based technology. And this is how the freedom cities and future development of civilization is soon to be headed at this current time. They said it's a new concept designed to create a worldwide peace plan. And then I said, what are the pros and cons of a currency linked to a DNA biometric? They said the pros are that you'll have safe, clean transactions, no black money or illegal trading like trafficking. You'll have non-dangerous criminals who could still be functional in society whilst working out their sentences, for example. They said the DNA biometric adds another layer of security to each of our personal, unique quantum IDs, creating more safety. If one layer was compromised through a cyber attack, it wouldn't affect the whole biometric ID. The downside is that it may be seen by society as invasive, and it will require cultural retraining to move fully into this digital quantum biometric system. So I hope you found that information about the quantum biometrics and the biometric ID linking into the financial system. I hope you found that interesting. It looks like the whole thing is going to run via the space with various layers of Spaceforce and space technology overseeing our safety and biometrics in the future. So I hope you found that interesting about the biometrics that are intended to be brought in the future, which will run with the military structures and will allow us to operate within what they're calling freedom cities, giving us freedoms of speech, movement, and sovereignty. Thank you for listening.